People of the internet, Dunkles Trussellskins is having a meltdown, and old Dunkles is starting to crash out hard. And today, we are going to learn what broke Dunkles Trussellskins. Let's go.
Problem is, like, where you're kind of in a bit of a bind is that all this human attention has been placed upon you, and you have to wrestle with...
Duncan Trussell just had a complete meltdown on the internet. This is a guy who used to warn Joe Rogan about powerful people infiltrating his circle. He literally predicted what would happen to the podcast. And now, he's become exactly what he warned against. After a YouTuber named Elephant Graveyard dropped a 90-minute documentary exposing the Rogansphere, Duncan was one of the only people who responded. Instead of handling it with humor, Duncan crashed out so hard that even his own fans turned on him. But here's where it gets interesting.
Everyone else slowly morphs into a junior varsity neocon.
Palantir thing is very odd.
A lot of people feel that this is the precursor to a social credit score, a digital kind of police state, and that it's being done under the guise of security, that you will be safer.
Which is what the Patriot Act was brought through with.
While Duncan was...
Ain't that convenient? Tim Dillon is trying to flip-flop his way onto the other side when promoting and going along with it all the time. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? That's so wild. He is a con man through and through. You notice he must have built him like a people forecasting app or some shit. Because every time he's always a couple days like, he's going to get canceled in 2 days. It's going to be bad. And then he flip-flops his position to look like, yo, accountability, go that way. You notice that all these guys in the Rogansphere don't want to have accountability. I don't understand how people look at Tim Dillon and even trust. If you want to watch him and watch him for his angry little rants and laughs, I listen to him at points. I could only take him for a certain amount of time. But I understand. Just him going off is entertaining. But he tried to be somebody. He tried to be a lighthouse in the distance for people. He ran up there and he went all politics crazy. And now he is trying to distance himself from it. Isn't that something?
Defending billionaires and making awkward joke videos. Tim Dillon was doing the opposite. Tim went on Rogan's podcast and said what everyone's been thinking. He called out Peter Thiel, questioned Palantir's surveillance tech.
Come on now.
Roasted the whole situation while Joe sat there in uncomfortable silence. This is how...
Bro, Tim Dillon is a guy behind your back would talk shit about you and then come up to you and tell you someone's talking shit about you. That's Tim Dillon.
Duncan Trussell went from being one of the cool ones to just another yes man in Rogan's circle, and how Tim Dillon became the last honest voice in that whole world.
Those people, and what are they up to? And then you start thinking, see, this is what I think about if I were you. Then you start thinking like, man, I've got this podcast that lots of people listen to. Has it ever happened where maybe some really intelligent person has manipulated me in an attempt to get me to disseminate some kind of information out into the world?
Who Duncan Trussell used to be. Before we get into the meltdown, you need to understand who Duncan used to be. For years, Duncan Trussell was the spiritual weird guy in Joe Rogan's crew. He'd come on the podcast and talk about meditation, Buddhism, psychedelics, and consciousness. Sometimes it got too guru-heavy, but people gave him a pass because he seemed genuine. More importantly, Duncan was one of the few people in Rogan's circle who would actually challenge Joe. He wasn't afraid to push back. And back in 2015, Duncan literally warned Rogan about exactly what's happening now.
Okay, if you look back at older podcasts, you could see that Duncan Trussell has always been one of the boys. He has participated in these things. Just like I said, he tries to come off of the nice guy, the introspective guy, the guy you talk about philosophy and tripping in the van with. You know what I mean? He tries to come off, and he tries to use that to shield himself from criticism. Dunkles can do what he wants, but if someone calls him out, he's reading a book that is really enlightening him and making him a different person and learning that his ways were sometimes flawed. But this new perspective will help that. That's the kind of guy. He'll spit some like guru ass shit on you or when you try to call him out. And now Duncan has been doing this, and he's part of this. I don't know what you would call him, but I would say hippie, right? Or metaphysical. I don't know. He's into that shit. And if he's into that shit, a lot of the core principles are treating people like you would want to be treated, making sure everybody is taken care of, anti-corporation, right? Local good, the whole spiel. And so because he's like that, he's well aware of who Joe is. He's well aware of who Joe is. And he's well aware that he's going against himself. And he's very well aware that everybody can see it. Right? So he's coming to his breaking point because he's been doing this for so long. He wanted to reap the rewards, the benefits, go to the parties with Joey Diaz hosting them, right? He wanted to do all that. But he didn't want y'all to hold him accountable. And the thing is people can change. I totally believe in that. If I didn't, I would just be the first mistake I made and never. We're not saying they can't change, but if you read a podcast or watch a podcast from 10 years ago and you watch one now, they've been doing the same shit. They just got better covering up. And they got better at ducking and dodging. Stick and move. Right? They got better at that. Because they don't want to be held accountable, because if they are, you will find out who they are. Right?
There's this old clip where Duncan is sitting across from Joe, basically predicting the future. He says, you've got this massive audience, and you have to think about whether intelligent people are manipulating you to spread information. He's talking about billionaires, tech elites, people with serious power who want access to Rogan's millions of listeners. Joe laughs it off and says, "Good luck manipulating me, Duncan Trussell. I'm an American." Classic Joe response. But Duncan keeps going. He warns him about people from deep, dark wells of perspective who are organized and strategic. He's describing exactly what Peter Thiel and Elon Musk would later become in Joe's life. Duncan wasn't wrong. Fast forward to today.
Isn't it crazy? What I'm trying to advocate here is a decent respect. And these people here have been calling people out about their politics, calling out politicians, calling out doctors over COVID, calling out the government, calling people names, labeling people, saying all these bad things about people, right? They've been doing that. And they've been doing it the whole time. If you look back at the older episodes or videos from those guys, they were making fun of people. They were shitting on people, right? And they were all content to do that. But now we're pointing out, what you're doing is not good for the comedy scene and just not good for society. They flip it around, right? They flip it around and they say all this shit. And they want to call you names, right? They want to call you names. They want to call you, oh, you're not a man. Oh, you're a snowflake. Oh, you're this, you're that. You're a liberal. Look, I'm not a registered Democrat and I'm not a registered Republican. I don't believe in any of the parties. I think both parties are incredibly interested in themselves and not the good of people. It's about spreading agendas, all that bullshit. It's not anything. It's just about decent respect. Just decency and respect for people. Because look at the world. Is the world working? Wars, genocides, famines, homelessness, hunger, no education. It's not. So obviously we got to do something better. And that doesn't mean you can't change. And that doesn't mean, all this stuff, right? we mess up, we can change, we can be forgiven. But you got to want to, and you got to show it, right? But if you continue pushing these things that oppress people, that oppress communities, cultures, that create divisions in those same communities and cultures, then that ain't change. The stuff these guys are doing is harmful. And it's not politics, and it's not trying to suck up to anybody or suck up to any certain culture. It's about being decent, and it's certainly not about manliness. 99% of you aren't even as tall as me. So if I ain't a man, what the fuck does that make you? I was gifted with the tall giant genes. So if I'm not a man, what are you? And the reason you're trying to project your manliness so much is because you ain't worth a shit. And you ain't a man. If you got to talk about it, you ain't about it. Y'all need to get off of them dumb internet insults and tropes and grow the fuck up. Because these people don't care about you. And you're sucking and simping up to them like it's your only option on fucking Tinder. Get over yourself. We need to do better because the world fucking sucks. As far as, not nature. Nature's awesome. Great white sharks, terrified. But I watch all the great white shark videos. Damn. Bro, they did a one this morning where a guy got his head bit off. Because he was down deep and the shark just, meow. I don't know if it's real, but it was scary. Anyways, point of this is we need to stop labeling people because y'all were doing it for so long. Now we point it out to you. You don't like it and you're just trying to call us names. That shows exactly who you are. We need to meet in the middle. The middle is where shit gets done. You need to be able, if you're going to live on this planet with tons of people, we have to compromise. We need to stop worrying about race and gender and all this shit and start working on how does everyone get fed? How does everyone get educated? How does everyone go to the hospital? How does everyone stay the fuck alive? And you can bitch and moan and call me a motherfucking snowflake, whatever you want to call me for saying this shit is wrong. But I don't give a fuck. Because y'all got to live to it. Ain't nothing eating me alive. Ain't nothing breaking me down, giving me anxiety. I don't feel bad. Because I may not believe in all the cultural values that other cultures have. I may not believe in every kind of sexual identity. I may not believe. And that's okay. Because they're different and I'm different. And of course I can't expect the same fucking things that I think to be the things they think. Maybe if we took all these issues and stopped worrying about race, gender, sex, all this bullshit, and start focusing on food, water, education, healthcare, this world would be better. The only place this world is good for is everyone up there. And notice, I'm right here, not up there. And so the fuck are you? So why are you fighting to defend these guys when they have spent so much time dividing you? Why are you trying to fight for these guys that have spent so much time dividing you? It does not make any fucking sense. And why can't they even stand on the principles they claim to promote and believe and expect you to believe? They're always flip-flopping. It's crazy. Stop making decent human respect a bad thing or a label or some kind of decision on your masculinity and start waking the fuck up and looking who's doing all this shit to you. Because it ain't me making this video. It ain't me you're mad at. It ain't the comment you're mad at. You're mad at them. but they're so good at disguising themselves. They made you mad at everyone else. And you were too stupid to realize it was them the whole time.
And Rogan's inner circle includes some of the most powerful tech billionaires on the planet. And somehow, Duncan went from warning Joe about this to defending those same people.
And Joe Rogan believes in dragons! Joe Rogan believes in dragons! 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 Dragons!
And you got to explain to the freezer guy that you're sorry to be the one to tell him this, but we truly live in hell.
The Elephant Graveyard video. So what set Duncan off? A YouTube channel called Elephant Graveyard released a documentary about the Rogansphere. It's an hour-and-a-half long and incredibly detailed. The video breaks down how Joe's podcast has shifted over the years, who's influencing him, and how certain people in his circle have changed to stay relevant. One of the main targets was Duncan himself. Elephant Graveyard pointed out that Duncan used to warn Joe about people like Peter Thiel, but now Duncan is friends with Thiel, he's been to Thiel's house, he's had dinners with him, and according to the video, Duncan isn't friends with Thiel because he likes the guy. He's friends with him because it keeps him in Joe's good graces. The video called Duncan Rogan's emotional support yes man. The video also made a point about how Duncan's entire personality has shifted. He used to question authority. He used to talk about how dangerous it is when power consolidates. Now he's defending a billionaire who runs a surveillance company and gives 4-part lecture series on the Antichrist. Elephant Graveyard included this bit where they zoomed in on Duncan's eyes and said, "Look at his eyes. Those are yes man eyes. He's cooked." It's obviously a joke, but it clearly got under Duncan's skin because what happened next was wild. Duncan's response. Instead of ignoring the video or laughing,
Here's something. These Joe Rogan guys need to get over it, right? They just need to get... How do they get affected by this stuff so much? I understand when you first get attention and you first, you're getting some kind of fame or some kind of social media attention more than usual, right? It's hard because people come at you and you don't understand and you don't have an identity. And you're trying to develop your identity, whether it's in your movie career, sports career, social media career, or just your job, right? And people come at you and you're trying to play nice and all this. But listen, something that always, they're just random people on the internet. They are just random people on the internet. And you got to let it go. And if you can't let it go, you troll them for fun to boost your algorithm and to bait them. Those are really the only two options, because everything else requires you to take it seriously. And here's the thing. If you turn the internet off, 90% of this shit, we could take out the news because the news is reporting on things happening in real life. Like 90% of the shit on the internet does not matter, nor does it affect your life. Is what I am saying and what Elephant Graveyard is saying really affecting their lives? Duncan Trussell, let it. But in reality, if you took the internet away and you went into his real life, probably not. Because here's the thing you have to be aware of. You have to like see it from both sides, right? Because we're sitting here accusing the Rogansphere of being a cult, of being this, right? And calling them this and saying these guys don't matter, blah, blah, blah. But everybody outside of this little commentary community, right, is thinking the same shit about us. We're just like them. We're in our own bubble. And just like they think, like we think what they say doesn't matter, they think the same about us. So does it really matter? No. People like to pass time, and people like drama, and people like watching YouTube videos of the drama. But if you think, I guess maybe some of this commentary is, but I just don't think it is. I don't think at times maybe. But I don't think, like, am I really making a difference in the comedy community? No. We're having a good time documenting these guys, finding out what they're made of, or at least that's how I look at it. And when called upon, try to stand up for what's right or what you believe is right. Who knows what's right? I think if nothing else in this world, right, we could learn to be better to people and be decent. And sometimes being better to people is knowing that you and this person trigger each other, could get into escalation and bad situations. And being better to people is just staying apart, staying away from each other. We could all do that. We could all be better. Shit, half the people in this community don't leave their bedroom. Right? If you look at the Kill Tony fans, their mom's bringing them little sody pops every 2 hours.
Laughing it off, Duncan decided to respond. He went live on his channel and told his audience he'd been working non-stop on a response video. People were excited. They thought Duncan was about to drop some thoughtful commentary or at least a funny rebuttal. Instead, he played a video of himself sitting outside talking about cake pops at Starbucks and penguins in video games. That's it. No actual response, no defense, no clever comeback, just random rambling that had nothing to do with anything. At one point, Duncan talks about a raccoon cake pop and says, "Look at that poor thing's eyes. It's like it knows it's a simulation, always seeking realness, wanting to be authentic, and yet doomed to forever be a poor imitation." People watching were like, is he talking about the cake pop or himself? The whole thing was an hour and 11 minutes long. About 44,000 people tuned in live, hoping for an actual response, and Duncan just wasted their time. Even his own fans were confused. The comments section was brutal. People were asking what the point of the video was. Eventually, someone in the chat asked him directly to address the elephant graveyard video. Duncan's response...
Here's another thing I gotta say. Just because a video in your community, this genre does well, right, doesn't mean everybody has seen it. We could be serious historians and documenting this and calling it, like, I don't even know how to explain it. But the fact that Duncan Trussell has to address it, I don't agree with that. I haven't even seen that elephant graveyard video. I just his style's not the biggest fan of that style he does. So I watched a couple and I just don't watch them. I haven't seen it. I'm too big and I don't have time. I'm literally working all the time, researching for this video and then working outside of the video. That's what I do. And hang out with my girlfriend and my dog. And I got to take my dog hiking. You always got to take your dog out. Be good pet owners, okay? So I don't have time to watch a 90-minute documentary and I'm not interested anyways. So fans get so obsessive. Right? Just take yourself less seriously. Okay? I just want to say that.
I'm not sure what that is. Can you send a link? He pretended like he didn't know what they were talking about. After spending over an hour making a passive-aggressive non-response video, he acted like he'd never even heard of it. It was embarrassing.
So people say that Peter Thiel is Antichrist, just for argument's sake.
Who says that?
Why the Peter Thiel thing matters. Now let's talk about why Duncan defending Peter Thiel is such a big deal. Peter Thiel isn't just some rich guy. He's one of the most powerful and controversial figures in tech. He co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk. He was the first outside investor in Facebook, and he runs a company called Palantir, which builds surveillance software for governments and military operations. Palantir's technology is used to track people, analyze data, and predict behavior. It's the kind of thing dystopian movies are made about. Thiel has been very open about his political views. He funded Trump.
I know that everybody with Palantir focuses on the surveillance, but if these guys wanted to bring down the government logistically, and probably in other ways, this is an actual, this company controls the government. It's not just surveillance. It's logistics. I believe they have an AI platform. They're literally, they basically, one of the parts of their company teaches, has software that helps you optimize your business, takes a lot of like the organizational things, such as like warehouse and manufacturing. I think they got to start in that. I don't know totally, but it's like everything. It's like management, surveillance, and they literally run all of the government's logistics. Like it's in there, and it's in companies, corporations. Like that's why Palantir is so bad. Is it could not only surveil you, it can mess up manufacturing. It could mess out shipments. It could possibly, in one of those scenarios, control the food supply. It's a scary company. And in all reality, what are we going to do about it? A lot of life is understanding that there's morals and then there's shit that actually happens. And then when you look at those two, you're often in the position, if not the position your whole life of what are we going to do about it? And you go, you have this and that. What are you doing about it? If you want to, you know, what it would require is people coming together. Now, you saw that happen. Where was it? Nepal or where they took over the government? That's what it requires. Now, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to rally? And I'm not saying it has to happen exactly like that or requires any kind of violence or anything, but it requires, if not in thought, if not in a stance, a value, it requires people coming together. And at least here in America, shit, everyone wants to do their own thing so bad. That ain't going to happen. So Palantir is going to rule the world. That's just what it is.
Trump's 2016 campaign, he's talked about how democracy might not be compatible with freedom. He's even hesitated when asked if he wants the human race to survive. So when Duncan Trussell, the guy who used to talk about love and consciousness and spiritual awakening, starts defending Peter Thiel, people notice. It doesn't make sense. Unless you realize that Duncan's friendship with Thiel isn't about shared values, it's about staying relevant in Joe's world. And here's the really weird part. Even Joe Rogan has admitted that Palantir is creepy. Joe's not naive. He knows what that company does. But he still invites Thiel on the podcast. He still goes to Thiel's dinners. And Duncan, who used to warn Joe about exactly this kind of influence, now defends it. In the Elephant Graveyard video, there's a clip of Duncan talking about meeting Peter Thiel. Someone asks him if Thiel seems...
Yeah, that's the last one I saw. Isn't that the one with the dragon? You want me to be honest? The reason I stopped watching Elephant Graveyard videos was that fucking dragons. It's like, we get it. He believes in dragons. Just kept playing over and over and over again. That's what got me off of that, right?
It's like the Antichrist. And Duncan says, no, he's actually a normal dude. Super smart. Nothing subversive about him. People watching were like, are you serious? This is the same Peter Thiel who gives lecture series about the Antichrist.
Peter Thiel is giving a 4-part lecture on the Antichrist.
Yeah, that seems odd.
4-part. Well, here's what's really wild to me. 4 parts. It's not just one. One lecture on the Antichrist would be insane.
Tim Dillon enters the chat. While Duncan was busy crashing out and defending billionaires, Tim Dillon was doing the exact opposite. Tim went on Joe Rogan's podcast and said what everyone else was too afraid to say. He called out Peter Thiel directly, questioned Palantir's role in surveillance, and roasted the whole situation with Joe sitting right there.
I'm just going to give you a theory, but you notice all these billionaires, all these people that control the world are usually small, unattractive men. Do you notice that? That Napoleon complex seems like the fucking golden rule. The more and more you look into and I honestly, I don't know what it feels like. You know, I just don't. But for some reason, those things, when they combine, they always make for angry little guys.
And the best part, Joe didn't really push back. He just kind of sat there and let Tim cook. Because deep down, Joe knows Tim's right. Tim brought up the fact that Peter Thiel gave a 4-part lecture series on the Antichrist. not 1 lecture, 4. And Tim's reaction was perfect. He said, 1 lecture on the Antichrist would be insane. This guy's doing a series. Nobody in his circle said, Peter, how about 1 lecture or maybe no lectures, not 4. Tim also pointed out how absurd it is that someone who runs a surveillance company and builds military AI is also obsessed with the Antichrist. He compared it to himself giving a lecture series on Long Island racism just to show how much he knows about it and how scary it is. But it's totally not him or anyone he knows. The implication was clear. Then Tim made the perfect analogy. He said, didn't O.J. Simpson write a book called If I Did It? This is Peter Thiel's version of that. His lecture on the Antichrist is If I Did It. And Joe just...
Okay. If you want to get an epic read, I think it might be, I don't know. I think it's over 200 pages, but I read that book, man, a couple years ago. I think I might have read it during COVID. It was in the last couple of years. Bro, you would, the natural question of If I Did It book, right, is you'd go, there's no way they would publish that. Well, in reality, there's no way they're not going to publish something so fucking crazy and psycho. It's a good read. And you'll just be like, bro, the world don't make no sense. It don't. Shit's crazy that he wrote that shit in a fucking book and they published it.
Just kind of laughed nervously. This is what makes Tim Dillon so valuable in that whole world. He's one of the only people who will actually call things out. He's not afraid to lose access. He's not worried about being kicked out of the inner circle. He just says what's true and deals with the consequences.
And using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building.
The Palantir problem. Let's talk about Palantir for a second because this is important. Palantir Technologies is a data analytics company that works with governments, military agencies, and intelligence organizations. They build software that tracks people, monitors behavior, and predicts outcomes. It's used by ICE to track immigrants. It's used by the military to analyze combat zones. It's used by police departments to surveil neighborhoods. This isn't conspiracy theory stuff. This is public information. Palantir's contracts are a matter of record, and Peter Thiel, the guy who runs this company, is now a regular guest on Joe Rogan's podcast.
See, I think a lot of people focus on the surveillance part, and I said this a second ago, because it's like the most like, oh, shocking thing. But I think, if I remember correctly, I think Palantir is split into like 3 different branches. There's 3 different branches and they all do something. And like the surveillance, who cares if there's surveillance? Like, not really, but like at the end of the day, the surveillance, they could watch you, they could do that, whatever, right? But they're going to be able to control like the food supply, shipments, imports, exports, strategies for the government. Like literally, it's almost like Palantir is something like Hootsuite or some shit for the government, right? It literally takes care of your scheduling, your management, your shipments, your deliveries, your surveillance. That's what it is. And I think that is the goal they set out to do. And they also do predictive outcomes so that you can, adjust your budget or adjust how much you're going to do this or that. I mean, it controls everything. I just want to make it clear. The surveillance, get it, scary. But if you ain't got food and clean water, shit, you ain't going to care if anybody's watching you. That's why it's so scary.
A lot of people believe Palantir is the foundation for a future social credit system in America, the kind of thing China already has, where your behavior is tracked and scored. Tim Dillon brought this up on the podcast. He said people are worried that Palantir is the precursor to a digital police state and that it's being sold under the guise of security, just like the Patriot Act, just like every other surveillance program that promised to keep people safe but ended up being used to control them. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Joe didn't disagree. He acknowledged that Palantir is weird. He said it seems like it could lead to something dystopian, but then he just moved on. Because what's he gonna do? Call out his friend on his own podcast? So instead, Joe lets Tim say it, nods along, and changes the subject. And Duncan, the guy who used to warn Joe about this exact scenario, is nowhere to be found. Because Duncan's too busy defending Thiel to actually think about what that defense means. The dinner situation. Here's another thing that shows how different Tim Dillon is from Duncan. Peter Thiel hosts dinners in San Francisco. He invites people from the Rogan circle. Joe goes, Duncan goes, but Tim Dillon turned it down. When Joe asked Tim why he didn't go, Tim said, "I'm a little wary of that circle of people. I don't know that I want to go to a dinner with someone who's going to talk endlessly about the Antichrist." And Joe's response was classic deflection. He said, "But yet you'll go to Saudi Arabia and perform." That's such a weak comeback. Tim performing stand-up comedy in Saudi Arabia for money is not the same as sitting at a dinner table with a billionaire who runs a...
Did the AI mess up this part? Did you not fact check this part with the AI? That is the worst example. I mean, this is complete. Yeah, they're both equally as bad. What do you mean sitting at the dinner table with Peter Thiel ain't worse than sitting at the dinner table with the Saudi royal family? Come on now. You better fact check that fucking AI. That is complete. You just take this part out your video. That's completely bogus. I would say going to Saudi Arabia. Well, they're both responsible. I mean, they're running the military's logistics and predictive outcomes and survey. Like, I think it's pretty equal. Both people they support cause massive amounts of death for agendas, money, resources, and land. So I can't agree with this part of the video.
Surveillance company and gives lectures about the Antichrist. And Tim didn't back down. He stuck to his point. He made it clear that he's not interested in being part of that world, even if it means losing access to Joe's inner circle. That takes guts. Meanwhile, Duncan is at those dinners. He's shaking hands with Peter Thiel. He's laughing at jokes about surveillance and the Antichrist, and he's pretending like it's all normal. Like this is just what successful people do. But it's not, and everyone can see it except Duncan.
You know, we'll see, right? We will see. The Rogansphere is now backing off, right? They're trying to distance themselves. You see certain comedians. And let's see if Tim Dillon is really a man of his word. Because you have to remember, either Tim Dillon is a con man right now, or he's really going to change. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But he's also the guy that sold people subprime mortgages that led to the 2008 financial crisis. And he regularly jokes about that. I'm just saying, if a man has changed, that was 2008. Right? And he's still been going that way. And don't forget, he was all chummy with these people until the backlash and accountability came.
If you're enjoying this breakdown and you want to see more deep dives like this, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps the video reach more people. And if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe because we're covering stories like this every single week.
What are the consequences? They were able to pull off this thing, some sort of operation. Who knows who was behind it? Who knows what was the motivation? But it clearly has something to do with compromising people.
The Epstein connection. Now we need to talk about something even darker. When Peter Thiel was on Joe Rogan's podcast, they talked about Jeffrey Epstein, and Thiel's take on the whole situation was fascinating and deeply unsettling. Thiel said he'd gone down all the rabbit holes about Epstein. He looked into whether Epstein was working for Israeli intelligence, for Mossad, for foreign governments. And Thiel's conclusion was that it was all secondary. He said Epstein was primarily a U.S. intelligence operation. not foreign, domestic. But here's where it gets really creepy. Thiel didn't just say Epstein was running blackmail operations. He said the people getting blackmailed knew what they were doing. They weren't victims. They were volunteers. Thiel described it as joining a secret club, like getting made in the mafia. You do something that compromises you, and in exchange, you get power and protection. Thiel literally said, the vibe is not that you somehow got compromised. It was more you were joining this secret club. You gotta be made. You're a made man in the mafia, and you get to do crazy things. That's an insane thing to say.
That's pretty crazy because that would make sense, right? That would make sense why there's a lot of videos. That's why it makes sense that there's pictures of these people with Epstein at parties in public. That would make sense. If they were a part of it and they gave up something to get something kind of scenario, that would make sense why there's so much information on all those who participated on it. And yeah, I could see a whole organization set up to compromise these people and keep track. So the person that's really in power, put that one into existence. That's crazy how that's described.
He's basically admitting that powerful people willingly participate in blackmail operations because it gives them access to even more power. And Joe just sat there nodding. He didn't push back. He didn't ask follow-up questions. He let Thiel explain how elite blackmail networks work, and then they moved on to the next topic. This is the same Peter Thiel that Duncan Trussell defends. The same guy Duncan says is just a normal dude with no subversive agenda.
Strange to have this, you build military AI, military drone, autonomous drone technology to export to war zones all over the world. You build domestic surveillance technology to surveil our friends and neighbors.
So what's the bigger picture here? Joe Rogan built his podcast on being the guy who questions everything. He was the anti-establishment voice. He didn't trust the government. He didn't trust corporations. He didn't trust elites. But now Joe is the elite. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He's friends with billionaires. He's part of the power structure he used to criticize. And the people around him have either adapted to that or been pushed out. Duncan adapted. He went from warning Joe about powerful people to becoming friends with those same people. He traded his principles for proximity to power, and now he's stuck defending things he would have called out 10 years ago. Tim Dillon, on the other hand, didn't adapt. He stayed true to what he believes, even if it means being on the outside, and that's why people respect him, because he's willing to lose access rather than compromise his integrity. The elephant grape.
Once again, he sold subprime mortgages to people in the 2000s. It's, what I find funny about this commentary community is some people try to act like they're not all involved. Like they'll be mad at Joe, Bert, and Tom, but Tim is okay, or Ari's okay, or Joey Diaz is okay, despite all the evidence of all of them being participating in this shit. They try to side with their favorites. It's crazy. Now you're trying to convince me that Tim Dillon's a good guy? Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Get out. Go on. Get out. It's funny. They're all part of a group, but, only a select few of them that are actually doing the bad shit. You are who you hang out with. You are who you hang out with. There's never been a more truer statement about people than that. And it's just fun. Oh, Tim Dillon's been honest and decent the whole time. Get the fuck out. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. The guy sold subprime mortgages. What else do I need to say?
Yard video wasn't wrong. Duncan has changed.
Decent.
He's not the same guy who used to challenge Joe. He's become part of the system he used to critique. And the saddest part is he doesn't seem to realize it. Meanwhile, Joe's podcast has become a platform for the exact kind of people Duncan used to warn him about: billionaires with surveillance companies, tech elites who question whether humanity should survive, people who casually discuss blackmail operations like it's just how the game is played, and the only person in that whole world who's willing to call it out is Tim Dillon. Not because he's trying to be controversial, just because he's telling the truth.
I went down all these rabbit holes. Was he, working for the Israelis or the Mossad or all this sort of stuff? And I've come to think that was very secondary. It was obviously it was just the U.S.
I don't think Duncan's a bad person. I think it happened gradually. He got closer to Joe. He got access to more influential people. He started going to fancy dinners with billionaires, and slowly his worldview shifted to accommodate his new social circle. You don't usually see it happening to yourself. You just wake up one day and realize you're defending things you would have hated 5 years ago. Duncan doubled down. He made that ridiculous response video. He defended Peter Thiel like his life depended on it, because in a way it does. His entire identity is now tied to being in Joe's circle, but it's not too late for Duncan to change. He could be more like Tim Dillon and less like a yes man. That would require humility and admitting he was wrong. Based on how he handled the elephant graveyard situation, that doesn't seem likely. As for Joe, he's not changing either. He's too comfortable, too rich, too powerful. The only wild card is Tim Dillon. As long as Tim's around, there's at least one person in that world willing to say the uncomfortable truths. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Is Duncan...
Yeah, Duncan Trussell is the perfect example of what happens when you compromise and sell out. It just is. And in life, you've got to recognize that doing that is just bad for you. Money doesn't make you happy. I remember I worked in Tokyo, and through my job, we had to meet some of these big people, right? Some of these CEOs of these giant global companies, and they took us to dinners, and I never felt so uncomfortable in my life. And that was when I was younger and starting to go out and like make a name for myself and what I did. And it really affected me. Like literally, there was a proposal, and after we did the presentation, as we were at like the top of this giant skyscraper in Tokyo, and as we finished the presentation, from the time we got down the elevator till the time we walked out the door and went down, the stone steps in front of the building, we were met by a lawyer, and we had to go to like some tiny little restaurant, in an alleyway, and he wanted to talk and show contracts. Like, that's what these people do. NDAs, everything. It's crazy. It's crazy, that world, and the power they have. And the power they have to ruin you and ruin most of society. And if you feed into that machine, it's going to take whatever it's going to take and require from you. And you chose that, remember. You chose that. I couldn't choose that. After that was the time where I started working on my own and working for myself. That was a moment for me. They wanted me to live out there. And if you've been to Tokyo, all you do there, I would say the countryside and outside of Tokyo is awesome for Japan. You literally work all the time. And when you don't work, you got to go to a dinner, and they want to get drunk for 4 or 5 fucking hours. And then you get to bed at 2, and you got to wake up at 5:30 because you got to be at breakfast. It was just insane. And these guys live like that for power, for money. I ain't got much time. It don't matter what nobody thinks about me. I'm just doing my thing, having a good time, enjoying life, trying to make the best of the shit show that I was born into. Right? Because I got to do me at the end of the day. And I hope that you can do you too. It don't matter what nobody says. Unless it's a judge. Doesn't fucking matter. Or the popo roll up on you, you know? Unless it's one of them things. It don't matter. This shit on the internet don't matter. I have my beliefs and my opinions and my analysis that I put out there in these videos, and you do too. We're all different. Let's try and come together. We may not like all each other, but we don't have to talk about why we don't dislike or like each other, or why we think you should be this or you should be that. We can talk about, okay, how do we treat humans better? Without looking at all the other shit, let's look at a basic core principle here for society and humans that would benefit them. I don't agree with lots of things. I don't like a lot of things. But the good thing that the Elephant Graveyard did is he's one of the people that did get to at least Duncan Trussell. And it did get to Joe Rogan. He crossed that barrier. And props to him for that. Because they need to be made aware that these things they're promoting aren't good for people. They only benefit the rich. And so you have to give Elephant Graveyard props for being able to cross that boundary that people like me and most of the commentary community don't even get on these guys' radar. You know? And hopefully they'll make a change from it, because you got to believe in changing. I'm not here holding these people and trying to cancel culture. I don't like cancel culture to the myth. I'm asking for this group as a whole and for them as individuals to put more thought into what they promote so that more people can have better lives. That would be my stance. Please, you all have enough money. Please start helping people and not supporting people that further oppress us. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.